They called her foolish, insane, even cursed, because she chose the poorest man in town over the richest one. But days later, when the truth came out, the same people who mocked her wished they had never opened their mouths. The church fell silent the moment Allor Vance made her choice. Not the mayor, who owned half the territory, not the banker's son with polished shoes and railroad power, but a man no one respected, Caleb Rohr, a cowboy so poor he wore his only shirt to his own wedding, a man so quiet people whispered he might not even be right in the head. For a moment, no one moved, no one breathed. Even the minister stood frozen with his Bible half raised, as if the ceremony itself had forgotten how to continue. Then the whispers began, soft at first, then louder, then cruel. What is she doing? She's throwing her life away. That man can't even feed himself. Feed himself. At the altar, Mayor Harrison Blackwell stood perfectly still, but the smile on his face, it cracked, slowly, like ice breaking over deep water. At 42, he had everything a woman was supposed to want: power, land, influence that reached far beyond this small frontier town. Marrying him wasn't just a choice, it was a guarantee. Security, status, a future without fear. And Allor Vance had just rejected it, publicly, completely, for a man who had nothing. In the front row, her mother's gloved hand trembled violently, the silk of her dress rustling like something alive, something angry. "No," she whispered, barely audible, but filled with terror. Her father didn't speak. Thomas Vance never wasted words. He simply stared at his daughter, standing beside a man he wouldn't even acknowledge by name. And in that silence, there was judgment. Cold. Absolute. Final. Allor felt it. Of course she did. How could she not, when every eye in that church was turned toward her, watching, waiting, judging. Her dress was flawless, white silk, imported lace, stitched by hands that had never known poverty. She looked perfect, exactly what a bride should be. But her hands, they trembled, just slightly, only enough for the man beside her to notice. Caleb didn't speak. He hadn't spoken since he entered the church, hadn't defended himself, hadn't argued, hadn't even reacted to the laughter, to the whispers, to the humiliation that hung in the air like smoke. He just stood there, still, grounded, like a man who had already lived through worse. And slowly, he extended his hand. No words, no promises, no explanations, just a hand, calloused, worn, steady. Allor stared at it. This was the moment, the point where everything could still be undone. She could turn back, walk to the altar, take the mayor's hand instead, restore everything, her family, her future, her place in the world. All it would take was one step. Behind her, the wind pushed through the church doors, cold, sharp, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Then she moved, not toward the altar, not toward safety, but toward him. Her fingers closed around his hand, and just like that, everything changed. The church erupted, voices clashed, shock turning into outrage, outrage turning into something uglier. "She's ruined herself! This is madness! Someone stop this!" But through all of it, Caleb didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't even tighten his grip. And Allor, she didn't let go. In that moment, she lost everything she had been raised to protect. her family's approval, her name, her future. All of it gone. For a man who hadn't even tried to convince her. And that was what terrified them most. Not his poverty, not his silence, but the fact that she had chosen him freely. No pressure, no manipulation, no promise of wealth or comfort or safety. Just him. And as the minister finally found his voice, as the ceremony struggled forward, as the town watched in disbelief, there was one question hanging unspoken in every mind. Why? Why would a woman like her choose a man like him? And more importantly, what did she see that no one else could? Because soon, very soon, they were all going to find out. No. The word cut through the chaos, sharp, commanding, impossible to ignore. Thomas Vance stepped forward, slowly, deliberately, the kind of movement that didn't ask for attention, but demanded it. This ends now. His voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. The entire church fell silent again. Alar. He didn't raise his voice, but there was iron in it. Come here. It wasn't a request. It never had been. For 21 years, that voice had shaped her life, told her where to stand, what to say, who to become. And for a brief moment, her fingers tightened around Caleb's hand, just slightly, not from doubt, but from memory. I'm not coming back. Her voice was quiet, but it didn't break. A ripple moved through the room, shock, disbelief, something dangerously close to scandal. Thomas Vance stopped walking, just one step away from her, and for the first time, something flickered in his expression. Not anger, not yet. Something worse. You don't understand what you're doing. Each word measured, controlled, like a man trying not to lose control. I understand perfectly. That did it. The restraint snapped. You are throwing your life away. His voice rose, filling the church like thunder. For him? He didn't even look at Caleb, didn't acknowledge him as a person, only as a mistake. This man has nothing. No land, no name, no future. And you would trade everything for that? Alar didn't look at her father. She looked at Caleb. He still hadn't spoken, still hadn't moved, still hadn't tried to save himself. And somehow, that steadiness, that silence, felt more honest than anything else in the room. Yes. The word landed, soft, final, irreversible. A sharp sound broke from the front row. Her mother. A breath that turned into something between a sob and a gasp. You will not do this! Thomas Vance stepped closer now, close enough that the distance between them was no longer social, but personal. If you walk out of this church with him, he paused, and when he spoke again, his voice dropped, cold, deadly. You walk out with nothing. No inheritance, no home, no family. Do you understand me? The words hung there, heavy, like a door closing. Alar swallowed. For a moment, just a moment, the weight of it pressed against her. Everything she had ever known, about to vanish. Then she nodded. Yes. The simplicity of it, stunned him. Behind them, a slow clap echoed. Once, twice, then stopped. Mayor Blackwell stepped forward. His smile was gone now, completely. "Well," his voice was calm, too calm. "This has certainly become entertaining." He walked toward them, measured steps, eyes fixed on Aller. "You accepted my proposal. You wore my ring." His voice tightened. "And now you humiliate me in front of this entire town?" Aller didn't flinch. "I tried to tell you yesterday. You wouldn't listen." For a second, something flickered in his eyes. Hurt, real, unexpected. Then it hardened into something far more dangerous. "And this?" He gestured toward Caleb. "This is your answer? A man who cannot even speak for himself?" All eyes turned, waiting, hoping for Caleb to finally say something, defend himself, explain, do anything. He didn't. The silence stretched, uncomfortable, then humiliating. Blackwell let out a quiet laugh. There it was, superiority, certainty. "You don't even know what you've chosen." He stepped closer to Aller, lowered his voice. "This man will give you nothing but hardship. No comfort, no protection, no future. And when you realize that," his eyes flicked briefly to Caleb, then back to her, "there will be no one left to take you back." The threat lingered, not shouted, not forced, just stated. For the first time, Caleb moved, just slightly. He stepped forward, not aggressively, not defensively, just enough to stand beside her, still silent, but present. And somehow, that small movement shifted everything. Alar exhaled, slowly, steadily. Then she reached up and removed the ring from her finger. Gasps rippled through the church. She held it out, toward Blackwell. "I'm sorry, but I can't marry you." For the first time, he had no answer, no control, no power over what was happening. And in that moment, everyone in that church understood this wasn't a mistake. This was a decision. And it was only the beginning. "Reverend?" Alar turned, her voice steady now, clear, cutting through the tension. "Will you marry us?" The question hit harder than anything before it, because this time there was no hesitation left. Reverend Talbot froze, his hands tightened around the Bible, his eyes darting across the room, to her parents, to Blackwell, to the crowd, searching for permission. He found none. "Miss Vance, perhaps," he swallowed, "we should discuss this privately." "I'm not confused," the firmness in her voice. It stopped him, stopped everyone. "Either you marry us," she continued, "or we find someone who will." A dangerous line, in a town where reputation meant everything. Blackwell stepped forward again, fury barely contained now. "This is absurd. You will not turn this into some spectacle." But it already was. The entire church leaned forward, drawn into something they couldn't stop watching. Reverend Talbot closed his eyes briefly, a man making a choice he knew would follow him. Then he opened them. "I cannot refuse a union," his voice trembled slightly, "entered by free will." That was it, the point of no return. The room erupted again, gasps, protests, angry voices clashing, but the decision had already been made. "Come forward." Alar moved first. Her dress whispered across the wooden floor, white against rough timber. Elegance, walking straight into uncertainty. Caleb followed, heavy steps, boots still damp from snow, leaving faint marks behind him. They stood side by side. The contrast was almost painful to look at. She, grace, wealth, everything refined. He, dust, silence, a life carved by survival. And yet, they didn't look mismatched. They looked certain. "I cannot do this," her mother's voice broke behind them. "Thomas, stop them." But Thomas Vance didn't move. He stood, watching, silent now, as if something inside him had already shut down. The ceremony began. Reverend Talbot's voice shook at first, then steadied. Familiar words, spoken into a room that rejected them. "If anyone objects," he hesitated. No one spoke. Not because they didn't want to, but because something in the air had shifted. This was no longer a mistake. It was a stand. "Allor Vance, do you take this man?" "I do." She didn't wait for the full question, didn't hesitate, didn't look back. "And do you?" The Reverend turned to Caleb. "Take this woman." For the first time, every person in that church leaned forward, waiting, watching. He opened his mouth. "I do." 2 words, low, rough, like they hadn't been used much, but steady, unshakable. And just like that, it was done. "I now pronounce you," the Bible closed with a sharp sound, "man and wife." The words echoed, not like a blessing, but like a verdict, a door closing. Allor turned toward him. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. Just for a second. Had she really done this? Had she really burned everything behind her? Caleb saw it. He reached up, his hand rough, careful, and touched her cheek. Not possession, not dominance, just steady, grounding. The doubt faded. They turned together, facing the crowd. The reaction was immediate. Chaos. Her mother collapsed into the pew, crying openly now. Women rushed to her side. Her father didn't move, still standing, like a man carved from stone. Blackwell was gone. No one had seen him leave. But his absence was louder than anything else in the room. They walked down the aisle, together, and the whispers followed them like thrown stones. "She's ruined. He'll leave her. Give it months. She'll come crawling back." Allor heard every word, but she didn't slow, didn't look back. Outside, the storm had begun, snow falling thick, fast, unforgiving. She stopped at the top of the steps, looked out, at the town she had always known. People were already watching, waiting, judging. Caleb stepped down first, then turned, extended his hand. Simple, quiet, the same way it had begun. Allor looked at it, then at him, and once again, she chose. She took his hand and stepped into the storm. Behind them, the church doors closed, sealing everything she had left behind. Ahead of them, only snow, only silence, only a life no one believed would survive. But they were about to be very wrong. The town disappeared behind them, swallowed by snow, by distance, by everything Allor had just left behind. Neither of them spoke, only the sound of wind and boots pressing into fresh snow. Each step taking her further away from everything she had ever known. They walked to the edge of town, where the buildings thinned, where the roads stopped being maintained, where people stopped pretending life was easy. And then they stopped. In front of it, the cabin. Alar stared. It wasn't a house, not by any definition she had grown up with. It was rough wood, crooked lines, a door that didn't quite sit right in its frame, one window covered in oiled paper instead of glass. The chimney leaned slightly, as if even it wasn't sure how long it would last. This was where he lived. This was where she lived now. The weight of it hit her all at once, not in words, not in thoughts, but in something deeper. Reality. No servants, no warm rooms, no polished floors or soft lights, no safety. Only this. The wind picked up, driving snow against her dress. The cold cut through silk instantly. Her shoes, made for walking down an aisle, not through winter, were already soaked. She started to speak, then stopped. She didn't even know what she meant to say. Caleb moved past her, as if this moment didn't require explanation. He pushed the door open. It creaked, loud, unapologetic. Darkness inside. Then a spark. Light flickered to life. Warm, faint, but real. He stepped back slightly, leaving space. For her. Alar hesitated, just a second, then stepped inside. The air was cold, but not empty. She looked around, slowly, taking it in. One room, small, maybe enough for one person. A bed in the corner, neatly made. A table, 2 chairs. A stove, used but maintained. Shelves with only what was necessary. Flour, salt, coffee. Nothing extra, nothing wasted. Poor, but not careless. Caleb watched her, not nervously, not defensively, just waiting. Waiting for her to decide what she thought of it. The silence stretched. Then, without a word, he shrugged off his coat and walked back outside. Hilar turned quickly. "Where are you going?" "Barn." His voice simple, matter-of-fact. "I'll be back in an hour." She blinked, confused. "Why?" He paused at the door, didn't turn around. Privacy. The word hung in the air, unexpected, unfamiliar. Then he stepped out, into the storm. And just like that, she was alone. Alar stood in the middle of the cabin, water dripping from her dress, her breath uneven, her thoughts catching up with her all at once. What had she done? The question came now, sharp, relentless. She had left everything for a man who had just walked out on their wedding night. No explanation, no expectation, no claim over her. Nothing about this matched what she had been taught. Slowly, she reached for the buttons of her dress. Her fingers were numb, clumsy. The silk stuck to her skin. It took longer than it should have, but eventually the dress fell. White, ruined, pooled on the wooden floor. She stood there, breathing slowly, as if shedding more than just fabric. The clothes in the chest were his. Rough, too large, too heavy, but warm. She pulled them on, layer by layer, and for the first time that day, she stopped shivering. The fire crackled quietly. The storm outside grew louder. Time passed, slowly, strangely. and something else began to settle. Not comfort, not yet, but stillness. The door opened again. Caleb stepped inside, snow covering his shoulders, ice in his hair. He closed the door behind him, checked the fire, added wood. Routine, efficient, as if nothing unusual had happened. Then he looked at her, really looked this time, at the oversized clothes, at the uncertainty still in her eyes. You should rest. No judgment, no expectation, just concern. She hesitated, then asked quietly, "Why did you marry me?" He didn't answer immediately. He moved to the stove, adjusted the fire, as if the question required time. Then, without turning, "You asked me to." She frowned. "That's not an answer." Another pause. Then he spoke again, slower this time, more deliberate. "You were crying." The words caught her off guard. At the harvest dance, he finally turned, met her eyes. "You said yes to something that made you cry." Silence, heavy, meaningful. That didn't seem right. And just like that, everything shifted. Not love, not yet, but something, honest, something she hadn't felt in a long time. And for the first time, since she walked out of that church, Alar wasn't afraid of the man she had married. She was afraid of how much sense he made. The storm didn't end that night, but something else did. The fear. Not all of it, but enough. Enough for her to breathe again. Enough to stop feeling like she had made a mistake and start wondering if she had made a choice, a real one. The next morning, the world was still white, still cold, still unforgiving. But inside the cabin, something had changed. The fire burned steadier. The silence felt different. Not empty anymore. Shared. Caleb was already awake, sitting near the stove, fixing something with quiet focus. He didn't look up right away, didn't rush to speak. And somehow, that made it easier. Alar sat up slowly, the rough blanket sliding from her shoulders. "I don't know how to live like this." Her voice was honest, no pride left in it. Caleb nodded once, still working. "Then learn." No comfort, no pity, just truth. She watched him, the way his hands moved, steady, certain. A man who knew his world, even if it was small, even if it was hard. And for the first time, she didn't feel above it. She felt outside of it, looking in. "I don't even know where to start." He finally looked at her. "Start with the fire." He stood, moved aside slightly. An invitation, not an order. She hesitated, then stepped forward, sat beside the stove, hands awkward, unsure. He didn't take over, didn't correct her immediately, just watched. And when she did it wrong, he showed her, quietly, once, then let her try again. The morning stretched into afternoon. She burned her fingers, dropped wood, let the flame die once, then twice. Each time, he fixed it, then handed it back, again. By evening, the fire stayed lit, not perfect, but alive. She leaned back slightly, exhausted. He glanced at it, then at her. A small nod, approval. It meant more than anything she had ever been praised for. They ate in silence that night. Simple food, rough, plain, but warm. And for the first time in her life, She tasted something she had never known before. Hunger that wasn't about food, and satisfaction that wasn't given to her, earned. Later, the wind softened outside. The fire burned low, and the world felt smaller, quieter, safer. Caleb sat across from her, reading a worn book. She watched him for a long time. "You're not what they said you were." He didn't look up. "People say a lot of things. That you're nothing." That made him pause. Then, "They're right about some of it." She shook her head. "No, they just don't know how to measure things that matter." That made him look at her, really look, as if, for the first time, he wasn't sure what she saw, and that unsettled him more than any insult ever had. "Why didn't you defend yourself? In the church. They said you were nothing." Silence. Then, "If I have to prove something, it's probably not worth having." She let that settle. Deep. Quiet. True. Outside, the storm finally began to fade. Inside, something else began. Not love, not yet, but something stronger than that. Respect. And maybe the beginning of something neither of them understood yet, but both were willing to learn. And sometimes that's where everything starts. Not when life gives you certainty, but when two strangers choose to stay, even when it would be easier to walk away. If you've ever had to choose between comfort and something that felt real, tell me, what did you choose, and would you choose it again?